What's up? What's up? What's going on? It's the Black Podcast Show live once again. It's me, your host Auchante. And if you're new here, let me just explain something to you. Once again, this is the Black Podcast Show, and this is the only podcast online hosted by me, your girl Auchante. And for anybody that's tuned in watching me right now, let me just tell you I'm so grateful that you took even 5 seconds to come check out what I got going on. So with that being said, I'm not even going to waste none of y'all time. I got 4 segments, which means I got a lot of stuff to cover. So I'm going to jump right into my first and favorite segment, and this is the motivation. And this week, the motivation that I have for y'all is more like just a little advice. And I'm going to actually be quick this week because I just want to share something with y'all that I learned, that I actually kind of utilized over the last week, and I want y'all to take it with y'all and carry it through the next week. Open yourself up for this, though. Receive what I'm about to say because you might need it. And if you don't need it right now, you might need it later. So look, seek expert counsel. That's the motivation this week, is seek expert counsel. You probably have heard that before. And even if you haven't heard those exact words before, I'm sure that someone has told you before, listen to your elders. Listen to somebody that's been there before. Your mama probably done told you, I've been there before. You know, X, Y, Z. The reason I'm telling y'all to seek expert counsel is because a lot of times we try to go at things, we try to accomplish things, and we don't know what we're doing. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times we have big goals that we want to accomplish, but we don't even know how to take the first step. We don't know where to get started. We don't know, even after we get started, how to take the next step, and then how to take the step after that. So with that being said, I just want to say seek expert counsel, because it's as simple as asking somebody that's done it before, what do I do? It's as simple as watching someone that's done it before and seeing what they're doing. But we can't be so cocky and so prideful and so egotistical to want to, or to assume that we know what we're doing. I got a comment, my boy Josh said, we always want to make our own mistakes. And that's so true, we do. Ain't that crazy though? A lot of times we have seen people make the mistake before us, and instead of taking what we've seen, we go right behind them and do the same thing. If I see you bump your head on a loose board hanging from the ceiling, and I walk right behind you the same way and don't duck down, that's insanity. That's stupidity. So seek expert counsel. Sometimes we have things that we want to do that we end up getting so discouraged because we don't know where to start, because we don't know how to do something, that we just give up. And that's not cool. When you could simply seek expert counsel. And these days, it's so many ways to get knowledge. It's so many ways to learn things because you can simply consult the internet. And it's a bunch of experts waiting to give you the information on what you're trying to do. You can get on YouTube, and you don't even have to wonder, is this person actually an expert? Does this person actually know what they're talking about? Because all their credentials are available to you as well online. So, yes, that's the advice for you this week, is just to seek expert counsel. Listen to those that have been there before. Listen to your elders, and get that advice. Don't think that you have to go through things blindly, or don't think that you have to figure everything out. Some of it has already been figured out for you. Now, in some cases, there are mistakes that you'll make that maybe the information is not out there to help you avoid it. But in a lot of cases, the information is available to us. We just have to be humble enough to be willing to seek it out. And we have to be resourceful enough to be willing to seek it out. So just keep that in mind, y'all. Seek expert counsel. Don't get discouraged. do your thing. You know what I'm saying? And and be great because you can be. You have the ability to be great. We all do. So if you're watching, please like, please share, please tell your friends to watch this. Please drop a comment and just let me know you're out there watching me do me. Uh, and with that being said, I'm going to move right on to the next segment. Once again, like I said, y'all, seek expert counsel. Listen to those that have done what you're trying to do. All right, we're going to move into the next segment. I'm going to move into the true crime segment. I'm moving right into the true crime segment. And I got a very interesting story for you guys. This case, well, it's not even a case anymore because the victim and the perpetrator are deceased at this point. But this was a very interesting story that I surprisingly had never heard before. That surprisingly, there's not a bunch of movies and stuff on. So this is the case about the murder, should I say, of jazz musician Lee Morgan, who was killed by his wife, Helen Morgan. So if you're watching with me, then you can see I have Lee and Helen on the screen. So this is Lee and Helen Morgan. So basically, Lee Morgan was way back in the day in the 1940s and 50s and even the 60s and 70s. Lee Morgan was a young jazz protege. He was a child, literally, of jazz music and the jazz music scene. He had grown up listening to the early jazz musicians in New York City. His brother and sister had let him listen to their records when they would bring him home. They actually pulled their money together to buy him his first, the trumpet. Yeah, they pulled their money together to purchase him his first trumpet. And very quickly, Lee was, to say it in short, obsessed with jazz music. He was constantly taking classes. He was constantly trying to emulate the greats. And very quickly, he became a staple in the jazz scene. A lot of people wanted to work with him. A lot of the artists kind of saw the potential in a young jazz musician. And so big names like Dizzy Gillespie, the jazz musician Art, the drummer Art, big names like those took him in and took him under their wing and showed him the ropes. Unfortunately, with showing him the ropes, they also introduced him to heroin. Now, heroin was a very big thing in the jazz scene specifically. But from other, research, other books, things that I've read and studies that I've kind of done, I've seen that heroin was a big thing in New York back then, period. So, I mean, in any case, people are always going to be looking for an escape. So just like nowadays, just about everybody smokes weed, back then they were just into harder stuff. And, we don't hear about it a lot, but when you do hear about the truth of the matter, you see that no generation really has the right to be judgmental, because each generation have had their struggles, and especially with drugs and alcohol, because like I said, anybody, especially poor people, are going to be looking for an escape, and these people are in Harlem. They're black people in the 40s and the 50s, so they was going through it. They was facing racial discrimination and just flat out racism, period. So anyway, Lee actually got addicted to heroin. He could not balance being a musician and being an addict, which is what he became. So he actually was kicked out of the band that he was in. He was in a band called the Jazz Messengers, and they were a really huge group in New York back then at the time. But the leader of the group, Art, the drummer, he didn't have any tolerance, for junkies who could not balance their music and their unfortunate addiction, which he actually introduced some of them to. So anyway, Like I said, Lee actually ended up getting addicted, kind of falling off the wagon, until he ran into Helen. Now, Helen was known on the jazz scene as kind of, I guess you could call her the mother of jazz in Harlem in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. She was the mother of the jazz scene, of the jazz community, because jazz musicians knew that they could go to Helen's house for a hot meal, if they needed a place to crash, if they needed to get in touch with somebody. She was pretty much the spot. And not even the drug spot, but just the spot for jazz musicians to hang out. And they actually trusted her. So Helen actually had a very interesting life. Before she met Lee, before she came to Harlem, Helen was born in North Carolina back in like 1926. So we don't really know the full story behind this, but by the time Helen was 13, she had her first kid, and by the time she was 14, she had her second kid. So by the time Helen was 14 years old, she already had two kids. And it's speculated that it may have been a situation of like sexual coercion or just flat out rape. You know, we don't really know what that situation was, but she was born like onto a farm family. So whatever the case was, Helen ended up leaving her two kids with her grandparents, and she moved to, I think, just a different part of North Carolina with her mom. So Helen and her mom were living together, and by the time Helen was 17, they were kind of, making a way for themselves, and she ended up catching the eye of this 39-year-old freaking bootlegger. So this guy that makes liquor, because it was probably prohibited still at that time. So anyway, 17-year-old Helen catches this guy's eye, and he is into her. They get married. And he ends up drowning, according to some sources. By the time Helen was 19, let's just say she was a widow. However, her son later on says that Helen told him that she killed this guy. She killed her first husband, which it could have been due to abuse. This is a lot of speculation because Helen has never told her story except for one time. So more than likely, due to abuse, she may have killed her first husband. But anyway, when her first husband died, his family came to North Carolina to try to help her get together some of the funeral arrangements. They wanted to help her, just kind of close everything in that chapter out. So she actually came back to New York. Her first husband was from New York. So Helen went back to New York with his family to visit. Her plan was to stay for 2 weeks, but she ended up staying for 30 years. So basically, Helen never left New York after she went up there to bury her first husband. And that's pretty much, like I said, when she got into the jazz scene. So Helen was very into the jazz scene, the musicians. She was that place where they could go get a hot meal, where they could go chill and, just meet other people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, way down the line, Helen and Lee end up meeting each other. And Lee at this point is a full-fledged junkie. So one of the other musicians that knew Helen very well ended up bringing Lee to Helen's house as a way to try to get him clean. So as soon as Helen saw him, she says that she immediately felt that motherly instinct, basically. She looked at him and said, "Oh, this little boy." But he didn't have anything. It was dead winter, and Lee didn't even have a coat. He had sold his coat. He sold his trumpet. Lee was an addict. He had sold his things to get drugs. He had ran out of money, and he was at rock bottom. So Helen, being that mother figure, immediately took Lee in. Now, one thing I will say is that Helen is 13 years older than Lee. Lee was 25 when they met, and Helen was 38. So Lee is the age of Helen's oldest son. But anyways, so she took him in, got him a coat, got his trumpet back, and helped him get back on his feet. Helen, according to everyone in the jazz community, in interviews following this whole situation, stated that Helen was his backbone, his life, that he owed his life to her. One of the guys at one of the famous clubs Lee played at said that Helen was his manager, his mother, his lover, his therapist, everything. What I will say is, I mean, I'm not a relationship therapist. I'm not any kind of psychiatrist, psychologist, therapist, none of that. But I don't want to be. I do want to be all that to my partner, but I don't want to be all that to my partner. It's a lot. You know what I mean? It's a lot for one person to take on everything. So, like I said, she became his manager. She got him back on his feet in the jazz scene because Lee still had friends. So once he became clean, even though it took a while, people were ready to embrace him again. You know what I mean? Lee wasn't just a bum. He was very, very talented musically. So people were ready for him to come back into the jazz scene and were ready to form a band with him. And not only that, they were ready, some of the venues were ready to book him. Unfortunately, not all the venues were eager to book Lee. Excuse me. Some of the venues just felt like, even though Lee claimed he was clean, even though everybody said Lee was clean, it's too big of a risk. It wasn't worth it. So Lee had to kind of work his way back up. And over the next 5 years, him and Helen did that. And I mean, when I say Helen was ride or die, I'm talking about she didn't leave this nigga Lee's side until he went to sleep. So every day, all day, she following him around. I'm not going to say following him around, but she going everywhere with him, doing everything with him, helping him with everything. She carrying his trumpet. She is there for everything, practice, performance, everything, business meetings. She's the one booking these gigs and whatnot. So she would wait till he actually went to sleep before she even went to go run errands and handle her own business. When I say Helen was dedicated to Lee, she was. She truly was. So, and of course with that kind of dedication, it's impossible for someone that actually does have the skill and the ability not to make it. So Lee did. Lee became successful. He got back on his feet, and he literally wowed the jazz community. And he released this song that is still iconic in the jazz community called the Sidewinder, or something like that. And this is all, like I said, because of Helen's assistance. But just like you would expect, as you know, us, I guess in 2021 would expect, Lee started feeling himself. Lee got on top and is seen once again as this iconic jazz figure, this iconic jazz musician, this celebrity of sorts. And actually Lee was even kind of dipping his toe in the activism pool because there was still so much racial discrimination and racism going on at that time. So Lee was looked at as a superhero in the jazz community, and for those people that like jazz, just the same way we look at celebrities nowadays, the same way we might see a Drake or a Meek Mill or, you know, whoever. That's how this guy was seen. And so he started feeling himself. He started seeing other women. He started treating Helen bad. And I mean, when you save somebody like that, I think that the danger is two things. You feel like, so Helen felt like Lee owed her. Everybody said that he owed her. And she didn't do this out of the kindness of her heart, the way she treated everybody else in the jazz community. She did this because she wanted to be with him. Everything she did was because she loved him, I guess, romantically, and she wanted to be with him. Some of Lee's family, one of his nieces, said that it was like she was addicted to him. Some said that she was obsessed with him. She loved him. She was a woman in love. It's that simple. But like I said, Lee, once he got on his feet, kind of started feeling himself. He didn't quite feel like he needed Helen like that anymore. And he started being mean to her. He kind of started treating her like shit. And he started very openly seeing other women. And so people said that it was kind of a well-known secret. So he would tell Helen that he wasn't seeing anybody, that it was a lie, that it wasn't true, but everybody else knew. So, of course, like I said, some of these people are Helen's friends, or they are Helen's friends, and they are saying, like, they're telling her what's going on. So anyway, it gets to the point to be too much for Helen. You know, at the end of the day, she made Lee. Lee would not be where he was, if it wasn't for her. So the danger, like I said in that, is Helen feels like she owes Lee, but on the other hand, Lee, because he's no longer in that needy state, feels that he's ready to spread his wings and do him. So he started seeing this woman, Judith Johnson, and he would be driving her car. They were like seeing each other. So Helen at one point decided that she was going to punish Lee and pretty much ice him out and not come to his shows anymore. But Lee didn't give a fuck. He brought Judith to his shows from there. So as soon as Helen said, I'm not coming, as soon as she didn't appear and sit in her front row seat that was reserved for her, he put Judith right in that seat. So at this point, Helen starts getting paranoid because this codependent relationship that they had has become her whole entire identity. So one day she decides that she's going to go to his performance. She's going to go to his show. Mind you, she's booking these shows. So she gets dressed. She goes to his show. But before she goes, she grabs her gun. Lee had brought Helen a gun to keep her, to keep her at ease while he was out doing his tours and traveling across the world. She was going to be at home by herself. So he got her a gun, for protection. So anyway, Helen grabs the gun on her way to go to Lee's show, and when she gets there, of course, she sees Judith in her seat. And when she gets there, they're on an intermission. So Lee's not even on stage playing. He is taking a break, and he's over there talking to Judith. Helen gets upset. She tries to get people to tell Lee to make Judith leave. And Lee basically tells her, no, I'm not making her leave. And Helen and Lee get into it right in the club. They get into it right in the club, and Lee yells and embarrasses her and tells her that they are not together. He's not with her, and that she needs to leave. He literally pushed her down at one point. Then he dragged her out of the club and threw her into the snow outside. So Helen jumps up, runs back inside the club, pulls out her gun, and starts dumping on Lee. And because there was actually a snowstorm outside, because of the harsh weather conditions, the ambulance took over an hour to get there, and Lee did ultimately succumb to his injuries right there in the club with Helen by his side as he died in her arms. Yeah, a lot of people say that, and a lot of people said that Helen was immediately regretful. A lot of people say that when she killed him, she kind of killed herself too. The truth is, she's referred to as Mrs. Lee Morgan on this picture I got up on the screen, but they weren't even actually married. They was together for like 5 to 7 years, and he never even married her. They were common law. And she literally dedicated her whole life to this man, ended up killing him in the end. When the police got there, they arrested her. It's not like she tried to run or nothing. And she did I think she did 7 years in prison. So, yeah, a lot of people in the jazz community was torn on this because they were so close to both Lee and Helen. And the truth is, some of the greatest things that Lee did would not have been accomplished without Helen. So she was his life and the cause of his death. It's just a crazy situation. It's one of those things where you can't play with people's emotions, And I'm not excusing Helen. What she did was wrong. for her to say, and at one point she actually said this, that she felt like she owned him because of everything she did for him. And that's not right. You don't own anybody. And if you're going to do something for somebody, you got to do it out of the kindness of your heart and not so that they can give you something in return in the end. You got to straight up do it because you want to, not because now I want you to be with me forever. It don't even work like that, unfortunately. So, yeah, it's just one of those situations where communication could have been key. I mean, I don't know what could have changed this, what could have made this different, but yeah, it's just a sad story, I guess. Ultimately, it's just a tragedy. So Helen did her time. She got out of prison, and she pretty much just disappeared. When she got out of prison, she said that the hustle and bustle of the city, the music, the lights, and the noise just it bothered her. She couldn't take it anymore. So she pretty much just dissolved into a life of obscurity. And until 1996, when she did an interview with a professor who I believe was kind of like a adult reading program or an adult GED type of program. He's also a jazz enthusiast. His name is Thomas Lindman or something like that. And so somehow he ended up telling the class that he liked jazz music. She ended up telling him, yeah, my husband was a jazz musician. And, of course, he knew who they were. And he got the one and only interview that Helen ever did before she died in 1996. So like a month after the interview, she died. This was Helen completing that program that I mentioned. This was probably a little bit before her death. So like I said, just a sad story, just an interesting story. I couldn't believe that I had never heard it before. And so the jazz community lost two people. And rest in peace, Lee. Rest in peace, Helen. And y'all just, I guess don't play with people's feelings. I don't even know. It's like not even to make light of the situation. It's just a crazy tragedy, And as you can see, if you're watching, you'll see on the screen it says I'm posting an article from when this happened back in the day. It says Jazzman Morgan dead. And that was actually one of the nicknames they called this man, Jazzman, because he was such, like I said, a child of jazz music. He literally was brought up by jazz music, so he was dedicated to it. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next segment. Like I said, rest in peace to Lee and Helen, and listen to the Sidewinder if you want to just support his legacy, his estate, Lee Morgan. No, this is not him. I don't know what that was. That was something different. But yeah, let's jump into Am I the Asshole? Let's jump into the Tae Talk. Let's get into something just a little bit more lighthearted. Hopefully I can make y'all laugh. Hopefully we can do a little, we can give some people some good advice. All right, so if you're watching this live, go ahead and go to the Black Podcast Show page because I have to use my phone now. All right. All right, y'all. Let's get into the first Am I the Asshole? Am I the asshole for making my stepdaughter move out? Probably, but let's check. So, there's two things that made her leave: babysitting and a sports team. Stepdaughter is 17 years old, my son is 16 years old, and my daughter is 4 years old. I usually pay my son to babysit his little sister, but when my husband and stepdaughter all moved into our new house, she wanted to help my son take care of her, and he wouldn't let her do anything. This upset her, and the next time I needed someone to babysit my daughter, she kept asking me to choose her. Ultimately, for a few reasons, I put my son in charge of his little sister, but I still paid her. And the sports team. My son plays baseball. She plays baseball. She wanted to join his team. The team decided to vote on it, including the players, all boys, and it came down to a few no's from my son and a couple to his friends, which were the tiebreakers. She asked me to convince him to change his mind and his friend's mind, but I didn't try to change his mind. I just talked to him. He said he would rather keep the team just boys because it's more relaxed. Some of the boys would be more comfortable. Both of those things really made her hate me, and she decided to move in with her mother. My husband is upset and sad and thinks I should have done the things she wanted. Am I the asshole? I'm going to say this. Kinda. I think you are kind of the asshole. I'm going to call you Shalonda. Shalonda, and I'm going to call your stepdaughter Stacy. It seems like Stacy was trying to bond with you and your son and the daughter. But that could not be the case as well. I don't know why you wouldn't let her watch your daughter. It seems like maybe she wanted to make some money. Maybe she thought that, I don't know what her intention was. Probably just wanted to make some money, but you said that there was reasons you wouldn't let her babysit. And I feel like you probably should have listed those reasons. The baseball team thing, I don't think that's your fault at all. I think it's strange that she wanted to be on the boys' baseball team. Is there not a girls' baseball team? I'm not sure. That's not your fault. But it sounds like Shalonda, like you left out a lot of information, because why would she hate you over something that you literally have no control over? If you talk to your son, that's all you can do. Now, this babysitting thing, I'm kind of stuck on that, because you said that due to some reasons, you wouldn't let her watch your kid, you wouldn't let her babysit, but you did pay her, but your son wouldn't let her do anything. And she's older than your son. I think that it sounds like to me that you're not telling your son that he has to realize that y'all are a part of a blended family now too. The same way that baby girl Stacy has to realize that, Shalonda, you and Steven, I'm going to call your son Steven, he has to realize that too. Y'all are a part of a blended family now. I know that you're trying to look out for him and make sure that he's comfortable and everything like that, but yeah, it sounds like you are kind of excluding Stacy. It sounds like you're kind of pushing her off. So for that, I'm going to say, yes, you are definitely the asshole. And we can move on to the next question. Shalonda, you got to get it together. All right, let's go to the next. Am I the asshole? I think it's going to be, am I the asshole for... I'm not sure which one you have as the next one. All right, am I the asshole for pitching a fit and getting my nephew thrown out of school? I have been pretty lucky with my career, and I have been able to put some money away. I'm not in the 1%, but I'm just barely in the 10%. Oh, you got money. This includes my wife's contribution. While I make more, she does bring a healthy part of our income and wealth. We have a lifestyle to match this income. We live in a nicer neighborhood in our city. Not the best, but close. The schools in our neighborhood are highly ranked in the state. No shaming, but my brother and sister-in-law likely wouldn't be able to afford our lifestyle. If I guessed, they are likely at about 50% of our income and wealth. They live in a different school district, which isn't ranked very well. Not the worst, but not great. So in early April, a storm came through and knocked over a tree on brother-in-law and sister-in-law's house and made part of their house uninhabitable. They came to live with us. It's an emergency, so we wanted to help. The repairs were supposed to take 6 to 8 weeks. It has been pushed back due to the pandemic and the holy hell wood prices. We are crossed our fingers it will be done in October. We have generally been okay with our long-term guests, but there has been some fraying over boundaries. The house is tight on space with how everyone is camped out. Well, my nephew, who's 9, still had school last year and just stayed in his old district. Between the 4 adults, we carpooled him there. So I found out that my brother-in-law and sister-in-law decided to register my nephew in our school district. I am, to say the very least, livid. There is reasoning Their reasoning is that this is now where they live and the school is better for my nephew. My wife is spineless in dealing with her side of the family, and they can walk all over her, so she agrees with her sister. I think they are trying to worm themselves into our house for the long term. The house, even cramped, is likely better than their house. I fear in October, when their house is ready, they will say, but nephew is in school, so we can't leave. While I'm willing to help family, I'm too old to have roommates that don't pay rent. So I went up to the school and talked to them about fraudulently using my address and ended up getting him kicked out of the school. Well, my house has been ice cold to me since. And this has happened, was I wrong for getting my nephew kicked from our school? I just want my house back. All right, y'all. Sorry I sounded slow as hell reading that. This guy has no fucking punctuation. So for you to be so rich, you don't write very well. I'm going to say this. Let me think of a name for you real quick. I'm going to call you Dontrell. Dontrell, you are a fucking asshole. Like, Dontrell, listen to me. Listen carefully. You are a massive asshole. Like, what? Are you serious? You went and got this kid kicked out of school? They probably wanted to just take the opportunity to be able to get their son into a better school district. Obviously they have cars or something, because he was getting from your area to his old school. So what I'm imagining is that his parents thought to themselves, let's put him in this school while we have the opportunity. It'll be more convenient right now, and later on we'll figure it out. But he'll be in a better school. You already said apparently you in the 10%. Y'all live in not the best but close to it. So I think that you are like elitist. Like, you just seem like you think that because you got money, you are like actually better than people. You talking about even being cramped up. Y'all's house is probably better than theirs. Let me tell you something, Dontrell. Your own apartment is better than staying in somebody else's mansion. Like, that's a fact. Because when I get home, it's nothing like me getting home and I can take my shit off at the door if I want to. I can walk through the door. Sometimes before the door even closes all the way behind me, I'm taking my clothes off because I'm tired of wearing them. It's nothing like waking up in the morning and walking to the kitchen naked getting some orange juice. You can't do that. They can't do that at your house. What the fuck makes you think? Dontrell, not only are you an asshole, but you like kind of a little bitch. Like, you think that, you just think that you got it going on. You really think that? You think they're trying to worm their way into your house? Like, dude, screw you. They're talking about, oh, my wife has no spine when it comes to dealing with her side of the family, and she thinks they're right. No, it's not that your wife has no spine. It's that your wife probably agrees with her sister that she would like for her nephew to be in a better school district. So, Dontrell, yes, you're the asshole. To put it short, in short terms, you're the asshole. And I don't know. I think that with you being so nasty, like that, to me, that would be a cause for concern if I was your wife. So yeah, stop being a bitch. And let's move on to the next one. Like, I can't even believe you didn't finish writing that and be like, oh, yeah, I am the asshole. Like, how did you finish writing that and not realize you was the asshole? All right, let's go to the next one. Let's see what we got next. Am I the asshole for calling the police on my son's friend? Let me find it. Hold on. All right. My son, Brian, who is 13, has a friend, Tom, who's also 13, who I really dislike. To put in the gentlest possible terms, Tom has never been disciplined a single day in his life and is under the impression that there are and never will be any consequences for his actions. However, since Brian is on the spectrum, I believe that refers to autism, very few other children want to hang out with him. I have tried to tell him that Tom is using him for his Nintendo Switch, but he is unable to process that. Every time Tom comes over, he'll hog the switch to play one of the games, often a single player game. Over the weekend, Tom came over for a sleepover. As usual, he raced right up to Brian's room, turned on the game, and sat there for hours. He played until 3 a.m. on Sunday morning, and then he woke up at 10 a.m. and without joining us for breakfast, started playing more. At around 12, Brian had reached his limit and told Tom that it was time to go home. He was tuned out completely. Brian then came to me, asking what he should do, and I told him to be more assertive. An hour later, he came back, basically in tears, saying that no matter what he said, Tom was just ignoring him or giving him short, a little more answers. I walked in to find Tom as usual, mouth breathing at the screen. I told him that I had to drive him home, and Tom responded that he'd walk. It's like 2 miles. Then I told him that he had to go home, and the kid legitimately looked me in the eye and said, "No, I don't think I will." He actually tried to pull off the Captain America line. I then called his mother, who didn't pick up. Finally, I unplugged the machine from the wall, causing his game to turn off. But he attached the controller to the handheld part and sat on Brian's beanbag chair, again, impervious to anything we said. At my limit, I went to the other room and called the police. Since we live in a small town, the police officer, a good friend of ours, came right over. He walked up to Tom and said that there had been complaints of trespassing, which Tom responded to by saying that he was invited. The officer looked at me, and I assured him that we had asked him to go home. Then the officer asked if he wanted to be charged with misdemeanor trespassing. Tom finally got his act together and was taken home by the police. But on his way out, I told him that he was never going to step foot in my house again. I told him not to talk to Brian at school and not to text Brian privately. An hour later, Tom's mother called and shrieked over the phone until hoarse about how horribly I had treated her son. I stayed calm and told her I had called her, but she said she was busy in a meeting and couldn't talk. I guarantee that Tom fed her some lie-filled story, but I didn't have the energy. Told her to get her shit together as a parent and just hung up on her. I've received dozens of anger-filled texts, both from Tom's mother and from numbers I don't know. I wouldn't care what those trashy parents think, but I wonder if they have a point. I'm going to call you Jasmine. Jasmine, you are most definitely the asshole. Like, you called the fucking police on a 13-year-old kid. Like, that's crazy. Like, I'm torn, actually. I'm gonna say this. I understand that you wanted this kid out of your house, but what I don't understand is not being able to exert authority over a 13-year-old in your own home, especially when you're supposed to be protecting your son. This is, and I'm not going to say, obviously you shouldn't put your hands on other people's kids, but to say, oh, I unplugged the game, and he just, he plugged in the handheld part, and when he sat on the beanbag, like, he basically said, like, I don't give a fuck what you're talking about. Like, he did not care what you said. At that point, what I believe would have been an acceptable response on your end, you should have snatched that motherfucking handheld shit out of his hand. Like, for real. Like, boy, what? Like, what if your son did that, Jasmine? What if your son, when you told your son, hey, it's time to turn the game off, what if he said, no, I don't think I will, and you unplugged it, and he went and did that? It is fair for you, and it's okay for you to respond to another child in your home under your care with your son in the same way you would respond to your son. I don't know how you would respond to your son, but honestly, I just feel like you should have snatched that shit out of his hand. I feel like you calling the police, honestly, is a waste. because it could be somebody getting robbed, it could be somebody getting killed, it could be somebody getting raped, and the police over here with you because you can't control a kid that you invited over your house. And it's not like he threatened you. I kind of just feel like you the asshole. And then, like, knowing that your son is on the spectrum, you didn't set any kind of boundaries for this kid being in your home. I think that's maybe why I think you're the asshole, because you, Jasmine, let it get to this point. When that kid was over your house, not talking to your son, not engaging with y'all, playing a video game until 3 a.m., you should have told him, in this house, we turn the game off at 10 o'clock. Or we turn the game off at midnight. And in that case, it's not like you being rude, or it's not like you doing anything to him, but you're setting the boundary, setting the rule, let him know you can't come over here and just play my son's game and hog it up like that. So, yeah, I'm gonna say you're the asshole. I just think you are. Yeah. All right, let's do another one. I got time for a couple more. All right, let's do. Am I the asshole for what we got next? Am I the asshole for telling my fiance that saying yes to marrying him might have been a mistake? Ooh, juicy. Hey, so me, 24-year-old female, and my fiance, 25-year-old male, got engaged a few days ago. The day after we got engaged, my nan passed away. I'm guessing nan is for grandmother. After her long battle with cancer. Me and my partner went for a drive to buy a new cat today, and up until this drive, I hadn't cried over my nan in front of him. I've had a cry in private, but not around him, mainly because I know my partner doesn't like it when I cry. On the drive back home, I couldn't contain how I was feeling, and I just broke. I cried for about 3 hours. At no point did I get any support. He just drove and sang along to the music like I wasn't next to him sobbing. Anyway, we got home and we just put the TV on. After about 2 hours of him not speaking to me, I tried to make conversation with him. His replies were very blunt, rude, and quite snappy. I confronted him and asked why he was speaking to me the way he was. He responded by saying, "Because I've had to deal with you crying for God knows how long, and honestly, it's made me exhausted." I then asked him why he couldn't have just supported me and been there for me. He said, "Well, there's nothing I can do about it. You were crying over something that's not in our control." At that point, I got very upset and stormed off upstairs. He followed me and then said, "Oh my God, storming off, really? When are you going to grow up, stop being a child, and act your age?" I responded by telling him I'm starting to feel like I made a mistake when I said yes to marrying him. He then told me I had to stay in the spare room tonight and hadn't spoken to me since. Am I the asshole? Like, no, not at all. And Tasha, I'm gonna call you Tasha. Tasha, you need to get away from this guy. You need to get away from him. I'm going to call him Cameron. Yeah, I'm going to call him Cameron. What did I call her? Tasha. Tasha, you need to get far, far, far the hell away from this Cameron character. When I say red flag, like, I'm talking about a big-ass, just humongous 200 by 2,000 feet flag that's just solid red. This guy is an asshole. He lacks the ability to feel empathy. And if he does have the ability to feel empathy, he lacks the ability to act on it. You're telling me that your man, your boyfriend, your fiance, your future husband, Tasha, this your future husband we talking about, girl. You telling me that nigga couldn't pat you on the back while you was crying for 3 fucking hours? Like, what? He couldn't pat you on the back, give you a little, even if he did one of these little, one arm, bring it in real quick, it's gonna be okay, baby, and then let you go. Like, are you serious? He let you cry for 3 hours and offered no support. Tasha, if you don't think you can do better, I'm here to tell you, without having ever met you, I don't know nothing about you, girl, but you can do better. You can. I'm 1,000% positive. You can do better than Cameron. This nigga sound like a snake. He's one of those people that you call a mark in the dark. So, and it's not even in the dark. Like, he a mark right when it's still light outside. So, Tasha, you can do better than Cameron. You're not the asshole. Cameron is a major asshole, and I wouldn't be surprised if later down the line it gets way worse. Like, if you marry him, you're telling him that this behavior is okay. So if he can't even comfort you when your grandmother just died, like, that's the most basic level of I gotta be there. That's the most basic, let me pull over and give you a hug. It's obvious. It's simple. So Tasha, once again, no, you're not the asshole. You need to get away from this nigga Cameron. All right, let's do this last little swoop de whoop I have. And this one is a little bit different. It's actually not am I the asshole. It's a little, this one was in the relationship segment. All right. So this one is it a red flag if someone invites you over to their place for dinner as a first date? And this is for dating advice, sorry. All right. Me and this person met on a dating app, and after a few days of messaging, we both found a day we were free. I asked if he wanted to grab dinner somewhere, and he agreed. He said he'll find a place and let me know. But then he sent a second message suggesting cooking dinner and drinking wine. Obviously, since I've never met him before, I will not go to his house. But is it a red flag for him to suggest it in the first place? I know it's a common romantic gesture to cook together, but not as a first date. I can't tell if this is a faux pas on his part or not. And to that, I'm going to say, yes, it is a red flag for someone to invite you to their place for dinner as a first date. But just because it's a red flag doesn't mean that there's actual danger in the cards for you. It's a potential red flag, let me say that. Because it could be a couple things. This person could actually not have as much money as they expected to, and they may not have it in their budget to take you on the kind of date that they would like to go on. You know, it could be they want to go somewhere, but they don't want to have to, this guy doesn't want to have to be worried about what you're ordering. He just want to go, have fun, and not be concerned about it. And at the same time, going on a date is intended to get to know someone. It can be hard to get to know someone in such a public environment as a restaurant or wherever y'all may have ended up. The home setting is an intimate and controlled environment. So with that being said, it's a potential red flag. Because what this person could be thinking is, let me get them over to my house. Let me get them filled up on wine or liquor or whatever the case is, and we gon' get it in afterwards. Or they could be a psychopath, and they could be luring you to their home so they can either kill you or worse, sell you in a sex trade. That's very possible. Or they could just want to, like I said, bring you home, have you in a more quiet, intimate environment where they can feel relaxed, where both of y'all can maybe be comfortable and get to know one another. So is it a red flag? The answer to that is yes, it's a potential red flag. So you got to add the potential in parentheses because the answer is yes, but it could also not be a red flag at all. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get ready to wrap the show up. And actually, before I even wrap the show up, during the show, I actually got a text message that almost threw me off a little bit. Um, but I'm gonna just say this: a close childhood friend of mine, Antonio Wade, better known as Rudy, I just found out died. I'm not sure when. Um, Not quite sure how. I won't speak on how. But I just want to say, Rudy, rest in peace, man. I know we definitely didn't talk as much as we did as kids. I know we wasn't as close as we were, but bro, we grew up together, living down the street. Definitely was one of my brothers. And whatever happened, man, I'm just praying for your family, like for real, for real. Um, Y'all just take care of yourselves, take care of each other, be good to each other, like for real. We never know what's going on with other people. We never know what's going on in somebody's head. So just be kind to each other. Be kind to yourself and each other. And be kind to your family and friends and strangers. Because, you never know when the last time you might see somebody. You never know when the last time you might interact with that person. You never know what your last words are going to be to a person. So, man, Rudy, rest in peace, bro, for real. Rest peacefully. I hope that you are at peace now. Miss Sonia, Michael, Adrian, Tamisha, I'm praying for y'all. Definitely keep them in y'all prayers. If anybody from Milwaukee is watching or listening and, the family, keep them lifted up. Reach out, see if there's anything you can do. And like I said, Rudy, rest in peace, bro. And like I said, just to end the show on a positive note, like I said, the motivation for this week is seek expert counsel. You don't have to be stuck. You don't have to stop doing what you're doing. You don't have to get frustrated. You can seek expert counsel and get the advice of those that have been there, that have walked the footsteps you're trying to walk in. Once again, this is the Black Podcast Show, the only show online hosted by me, your girl Auchante. I'll be back again next week. We're going to keep going up. It's the Black Podcast Show. The Irie Place.